Greetings, friends. It's me, Wayman29, and doing this whole thing on Samuel is extremely difficult because I'm not really sure what format works. I'm trying to switch back and forth from the computer to the books, and it's very complicated. And I haven't really gotten into a study this deep before, and so the format is kind of an experiment, and I have no idea what I'm doing and how to portray that in a good way so that you can understand the value of this literature. And so I'm just going to be myself and do it. If you like it, you'll watch it. If not, you'll watch something else. But hopefully you'll tag along at least, maybe get something that I'm trying to say here. What I'm going to be using is the Jewish Study Bible with the Jewish Publication Society Tanakh translation. They have a lot of notes, and also I'm going to be including some notes from the Anchor Bible Commentary of 1 Samuel from McCarter, the author that I mentioned in past videos. So some of that I've read, I'm just going to go through it and discuss some of it. So already in 1 Samuel, I'm not going to read the whole thing. You can read it yourself. We have already climatic events happening between Pin and Hanna. I think I pronounced it right, and Hanna. Also, for Pinana's name, look up the goddess Inanna, just for fun. Not sure if there's any relevance, but it sounds an awful lot like that. Also, Elihu's son Tohu. Look up the Hebrew word Tohu in Genesis 1, and you'll be pretty interested in finding out what that means. I think the name Tohu here, his name means depressed. Peninnah means ruby, I believe, and Hanna means favored, because in the story Canaan favors Hanna. So you can see how some of these names end up predicting how the narrative is going to go almost, and the characteristic of the person on how they're portrayed in the narrative. Now when you get to Eli's sons, that's a different story. Here they're already doomed, because why? They got two Egyptian names, and it kind of gives the characteristics of them too in the narrative. One name means a serpent's mouth, which is kind of saying he could be lying maybe, and the other name means, I believe, a handful. So you can kind of tell where this is all going to go just by some of the names. Sometimes it's very interesting. So if you get a chance, look up some of these names. So one such day, here we are in verse 4. Elkanah offered a sacrifice he used to give portions to his wife Peninnah and to all of her sons and her daughters, but to Hanna he would give one portion only, though Hanna was his favorite, for the Lord had closed up her womb. Now, they used to go to Judges 21:19. They used to go to Shiloh once a year and offer up sacrifice. Shiloh is an old cultic Yahwistic early tribal league site, as is Bethel. Now, if you look at these two sites here, in both places, I believe at least in Shiloh, the tent structure existed with the ark inside of it, and the line of Eli, the priestly line of Eli, had control of that and administered the ritual rites of the early Yahweh cult. And what's pretty amazing is that the story of Samuel, just like Hanna and Peninnah are being climatic. Here, even the story of Samuel is starting to see with his sons the decline of the line of Eli, and how Samuel It's repeated over and over again how righteous he is, and it gives him this kind of grandiose birth, just like we've seen in Judges with Samson. If you've read that, that's a great story. You would think that this story here of the birth of Samuel came right out of Judges because of the themes. So also there are other women in the Old Testament who had issues having babies. There was Sarah, Rachel, Rebecca, and also, like we said before, Samson's mother. So here, Hannah prays to God, and she says, at least give me a son. I'll devote him to your service for his entire life. And she, in the Masoretic text, I don't believe it actually states Nazarite, but she vows that his head will not be shaved. In the Septuagint, I believe that it mentions that he will not drink wine also. And later on we find out that it's the Nazarite vow, or the Nazarite order, which you can find in Numbers chapter 6. And it's really great. You should read that because it'll explain a lot about what happens later and how the story could be possibly parts of it could be linked to Saul, because as we know, only Samuel probably only went to one battle later, where Saul had the Spirit of the Lord fall on him when he's fighting the Philistines, and he unites the early tribal league, and there's a lot of action going on. There's early stories of Saul going out to look for donkeys and things like that. So these two could be woven together, and because such a terrible light was cast on Saul, you wouldn't want to give him a miraculous birth. That just doesn't happen in Jewish literature. So also about bearing sons and being barren, in the ancient Near East, there's this text here. I'm just going to give you the reference. Etana, E-T-A-N-A. And it's about this epic. He wants a son, and he prays to Shamash and asks for a son, and Shamash has him take an eagle and fly and look for the tree of life. So if you can take a look at that in comparison to this and what's going on here, it just shows that the Jewish aspect, or the early Hebrew aspect of it, wasn't the only people worried about such things and wrote about such things. Then you get the exchange between Hanna and Eli, which is really interesting, because this is probably the very first part where prayers is said quietly. Hanna is so upset about it, about not having children. She's praying with her whole heart to the divine, and her lips are moving, but Eli can't hear her. And I believe in the Septuagint, it is a servant of Eli who approaches her and asks her if she's drunk. Now, I don't know how true it is. I heard at one point that Ephraimites, because they're from the village or town of Ephraim, did not drink wine. Don't know how true that is, but you could look it up. And he asks her, are you drunk? And she says, no, I'm just depressed and I'm very grieved, and so I'm praying. So this is probably the first instance of a silence prayer here, which is really interesting. So also, I wanted to throw in that Ephraim was in a constant struggle with Judah, and Ephraim was in a constant struggle with the tribe of Benjamin. So there's nothing in Torah and in Tanakh that doesn't reflect on Israel as a nation, as a whole. When you're talking about conflicts between people, it can be read both ways, because this text is multi-functional. So the contrast between Samuel, the Ephraimite, and the Benjamite, Saul. There's that struggle there, and also the struggle between the new monarchy and the office of the priest and the prophet, which is being established here. So not only will you have a judge, you will have a prophet, a monarchy also. So then we come in, and Hanna feels that Eli, or the servant, whichever it is, says to her, may God grant you, or I believe even Hanna says to her, may your wish be granted, or may your vow be granted. And so she feels better. She goes home. She eats because she wasn't eating before, and she feels better about it. So they go home, and lo and behold, she has a son. And here in Canaan knew his wife Hanna, and the Lord remembered her. Now the Lord remembering people is pretty interesting too, because you remember the ark story. Hanna conceived at the turn of the year and bore a son. She named him Samuel, saying, I asked the Lord for him. There's a lot of word puns for asked of him, so this could also be reference to Saul's name if you look up S-H-A-A-L. In the Hebrew, it might have some relevance there. Hanna did not go up to sacrifice again. She said to her husband, when the child is weaned, I will bring him. But when he has appeared before the Lord, he must remain there for good. So she wants him weaned. Her husband, Elkanah, said to her, do as you think best. Stay home until you have weaned him. May the Lord fulfill his word. So the Septuagint and the Dead Sea Scroll read, the utterance of your mouth. Translators express thanks to Frank Cross, because this is back when he was first doing the biblical text out of the Dead Sea Scrolls and translating them. This is before they're released, and they're released now, and it's great to have. So after the boy is weaned, she goes to Shiloh, and she brings the boy to Eli, and she says, please, my Lord, as you live, my Lord, I am the woman who stood here beside you and prayed to the Lord. It was this boy I prayed for, and the Lord has granted me what I have asked of him. And basically she says, she bows low and says, here he is. So here, it's pretty interesting too, because women formed a function, and later we'll see how the two sons were having sexual relations, improper sexual relations with the women who worked at the tent door. I believe it's only mentioned twice. We'll get into that when we get into chapter 2. And the hymn of Hanna, which is coming up, and maybe we'll compare some of that to some of the holy war hymns and psalms, and also compare it to an ancient Near Eastern text of what the Igigi, or the Heavenly Council, say about Marduk in his fight with Tiamat out of the Babylonian creation epic. So it's all pretty exciting. I don't know how this is going to go, but take care, friends, and remember, if everybody's thinking alike, then somebody isn't thinking